Bass live around grass, and I have yet to see any evidence to the contrary. From 6 inches of water to 35 feet, bass in your pond or lake call grass home, and so to catch more bass, you've got to throw your lures in the green stuff. But how do you know what types of grasses hold the most bass and what lures to select that catch the bass and not catch the grass? Well, my name is Tyler, and this is a masterclass video on how to fish aquatic vegetation, also known as grass. Let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! Well, what is going on, folks? Welcome back to Tyler's Real Fishing. I'm excited about today's episode because it is going to be a very science-based episode. Yes, we're gonna have lure recommendations, but I really wanna teach you from a science perspective what the different types of aquatic vegetation are in your body of water and what that means for you as an angler. And so because it's a science-based episode, I wanted the sponsor to be a science-based company, and that is the fine folks at BuzzerRocks. Now, the two main products they make are the live well treatment tablets and the blood stop formula spray. And I'll talk about the live well treatment here in a second, but I really think the blood stop formula is what a lot of us as anglers need, whether you're a bank fisherman, kayak, or bass boat, because we all have hooked a fish, again, not just bass, a fish in the tongue, deep in the throat, somewhere on the face, and it won't stop bleeding, and you wanna make sure that fish can make it back into the water alive. This fish release spray, I've met the guy who created this, big science guy. This stuff, when sprayed over a bleeding area on the fish, not only stops the bleeding, it also adds a temporary coating over that area that stops viruses and bacteria from growing on that area, but also speeds up the healing process. Every bottle comes with 400 sprays, which will last you a long time, especially for the price. And the live well treatment, again, for those of you guys who keep bait or bass in your live well, this stuff is awesome. And the tournament package comes with 8 different tablets, 4 of which increase the dissolved levels of oxygen in the live well water. 2 of them remove the nitrate and ammonia from the water, and the other 2 just increase the overall levels of amino acids and helpful things to keep those fish healthy in your live well all day. So if you're a tournament fisherman, not only is the blood stop formula helpful for getting a fish unhooked and getting it in your live well, this stuff is crucial on a long tournament day, or if you're a fishing guide, keeping your bait alive all day. Again, it works for saltwater and fresh. So big thanks to BuzzerRocks for sponsoring this science-based video. I will leave their 2 products linked down in the video description. And if you're gonna check it out, please use those links down in the video description. Now, today's video is gonna be broken into 3 main sections about aquatic vegetation. And I know y'all came for the lure recommendations, but I promise the grass science lesson is gonna help you become a better angler almost immediately. So that will be the first and probably longest section of this video. The second, of course, being lure recommendations for fishing around grass. Make sure you stay tuned for that. And then to finish off the video, to prove that I know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna show some of my favorite grass fishing catches on each of those 4 lure categories. So section number 1 on fishing grass, the science. I'm gonna have my phone out for my notes because as a non-science guy, I'm just a fisherman. I need to have all this stuff right and I can't be misspeaking. So I'm gonna go over the 4 types of aquatic vegetation. The first one being algae. That is a single-celled, they have no vascular structure, they don't have stems, they don't have leaves, no flowers or anything, and they either grow on things or they just kind of float in masses around your pond or lake. So the one that first comes to my mind is snodgrass. That is an algae kind of grass. For the most part, algae grasses are just not beneficial to us as anglers. I'm not saying they can't help an ecosystem be a better ecosystem, but as far as like making efficient, productive casts with our lures, algae are not that great. And there are some, of course, that are bad algae that can add harmful nutrients into the water. They can choke out ecosystems and therefore indirectly kill a fish, with some of them even directly killing a bass. Now, most of them are not that, they're just inconvenient to us as anglers. And since I'm not discussing algae in my grass lure recommendations later on, I'll just say this now. If you have a whole bunch of snotty algae type stuff in your ponds or lakes, you're gonna wanna go with weightless soft plastics and especially weedless soft plastics. So my skunk buster, the striking caffeine shad, or any soft plastic weightless jerkbait, I would say a weedless wacky worm, maybe a drop shot as long as you don't mind getting some snodgrass on your weight itself. But again, if it's high enough off the bottom, you should be fine. And once a whole bunch of the algae is covering the surface of your pond, the only lure you can really throw is a punch rig or a frog. That's the only, I guess, 2 main categories that are even effective at that point. But that is category 1, and that is algae. Category 2 is going to be floating plants. These types of grasses have leaves and roots, but the roots are not actually attached to anything down there on the bottom. And so wherever the wind blows or the current goes, that's where the floating grasses are. And the first 2 that come to mind, at least that I have fished, are duckweed and hyacinth, as well as gator grass, I think is floating. And this kind of grass really is pretty fishable. You can fish a topwater over the top of it or on the side of it. Of course, any kind of relatively weedless lure, so a spinnerbait, a vibrating jig, a swim jig, all that stuff can be great around floating grasses. And the one thing to keep in mind is that especially when it's sunny, If the floating grass is the only grass you have in that area, there's a high likelihood a fish is going to be sitting underneath that floating grass because, again, it doesn't have roots to go to the bottom, and so it can only clump up as much as the surface will allow, or the wind has pushed floating grass into an area. And so normally you'll have a canopy with open water underneath, and that's a great place for a bass, especially in the warmer months, the late spring, summer, early fall. Those bass love to sit underneath that kind of stuff. You'll see people in Florida fish that stuff almost all year round because it is a fantastic location for a bass to sit. Now, doesn't always mean there is a canopy underneath floating grass. The grass could have floated over the top of a mud flat and it's 4 inches deep there. There's no water. Or the floating grass is sitting on top of an area of hydrilla or milfoil, and maybe that's also kind of formed a canopy underneath. So the floating grass is here, the milfoil's up here. Maybe under here there's still a canopy. But just by looking at floating grass, you can't always tell if it's a total canopy. You've got to fish it. And the last two types of aquatic vegetation are submergent grasses and emergent grasses, below the waterline and above the waterline. And the main difference between those two styles of grasses, submergent and emergent, is the stem, how the stem is designed. Let's listen to Stephen Barden, a fisheries biologist friend of mine, explain.
When we're trying to identify the difference between a submerged plant or an emergent plant, if we have a piece in our hand, it's the easiest way to do it, but you could probably visually do this as well. This is the stem, right? The stem is down the center of this plant.
Yes.
If I hold this plant at the base, we want to see, does the stem hold the plant up or not?
No.
It doesn't.
Okay.
So that's a submerged plant. They're going to have a flaccid stem that cannot support it out of the water.
Okay.
Emergent plants would have a rough stem that could support the plant out of water.
So like a cattail.
A cattail, water willow, something like that.
Great.
So this is a submerged plant. Now, once I have a submerged plants have roots, they have leaves, they can have flowers, but they always have a flaccid stem.
And what Stephen goes into next is the differences between all the different types of emergent vegetation, and usually it has to do with how the leaves, what the leaves are and how the leaves attach to the stem itself, but that is far too deep for today's conversation. If you want to though watch the interview that I've been referencing in this video, that was like an 1.5 hour long interview I did with Stephen, and grasses was just a small part of all the fisheries biologist topics we talked about. I will put a link to that interview and our first one we did, again, 3.5 hours or so of fisheries biology content down there in the video description. Now, if I were to sit here and name all the different types of submergent grasses, we'd be here all day. And so I'm just gonna name a few of my favorites. We've got coontail, milfoil, I would say cabbage up north, probably one of my favorites. And as far as emergent plants go, we've got cattails, pencil reeds, lily pads, which I guess are kind of hybrid because they have stuff beneath the water and above, but I guess so do reeds and pencil reeds. And I guess hay grass is a good popular emergent grass, especially in East Texas. And all of those have root structures that go all the way down to the bottom. No matter how much wind is gonna blow, those aren't moving. One thing that is crucial about fishing aquatic vegetation though, is having an understanding of what the grass is, because just by looking at a type of aquatic vegetation, it can tell you so many clues about the body of water you're fishing without ever even making a cast. Let's listen again to Stephen discuss the differences between shallow growing and deep growing grasses.
Now, this coontail was going extremely shallow. The reason I know that is because the distance between the leaf spacing is very small. If we had...
You mean from the whorls?
Yep,
from
between
one
whorl to the second whorl is very short.
If you want to help me get this, you can.
It's very short between each whorling segment.
Okay.
So what that means is it grows in shallow water.
Got it.
The more spacing between those whorls, then the deeper it is, especially on this main stem that we see here.
Yeah.
Now those could be spaced 12 inches apart. If they're spaced 12 inches apart, now I'm talking about coontail that's growing in 10 or 15 foot of water.
And why is that?
Well, because it's trying to reach for sunlight. So it doesn't, so this one, it's getting all its sunlight from the surface, right?
Yeah.
If I was deeper, I need less leaves because I want all the pieces that are going to get the sunlight to feed the plant at the surface or as high up as possible.
Yeah.
So you'll have these spacing. So if I came to a reservoir that I've never been to and I'm at the boat ramp and I see a piece of coontail that's 4 foot long and I see the leaves are spaced very far apart, the coontail's out in deep water.
Okay.
So it could lead me to immediately going, okay, I know I have submerged grass in deep water.
Yeah.
But if I see the coontail and it's growing like this, it's shallow water. That could help me with presentation. That could help me narrow down the fishery really quickly.
Interesting.
Yep. You know,
Especially for somebody that doesn't have a fish finder. If you have a fish finder, you can kayak out there and see how deep the grass is.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to reiterate again, almost for myself.
Yep.
Is that same for all submergent grasses, that that on the stem itself, they grow farther apart?
Yes, it is.
If they're in deeper water?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Cool. Now, of course, while noticing that pattern can tell you how deep the grass was growing in your body of water when it broke off, that is just the first thing, just the tip of the iceberg that understanding grasses can tell you about your bodies of water. And one of the biggest ways I use my knowledge of grass to understand my lake is in the bottom composition the grass can tell me about. And within all the categories, submerged grasses, they can grow in both total mud bottom, sand bottom, all the way to really hard rock bottom. I think my home lake of Lake Travis in Austin, Texas is a limestone base. It is a really hard bottom lake, and they have a whole bunch of grass growing right now. So really, grass that grows under the water can grow on a lot of different bottom compositions. And they can also grow on 6 inches of water and also 30, 40, 50 feet way out there in the middle. They are extremely broad. And so by standing on the bank or in the boat and looking down and seeing submergent grass in the water, it can be kind of deceiving because you don't really know how deep the grass is growing in. The grass may be growing in 15 feet of water, but it's growing so tall because the water clarity is really clear, has a lot of sunlight penetration, and so the grass can grow all the way to the surface. You might think it's 1 foot deep, but it's really 15. It's just 15 feet of grass. But on the flip side, emergent grasses are very distinct and different in the types of bottom composition and depth they are constricted to. Lily pads and rice can grow in mud. Hay grass grows really well over clay. Cattails grow best in muddy or sand bottom, and pencil reeds for the most part grow really well around all kinds of hard bottom, even places that you look down and you feel it. It feels like it's almost just straight rock, but it's got a little bit of dirt mixed in. And emergent grasses also have a certain depth range they can grow in, and once it gets to a certain depth, they totally stop growing. I would say cattails probably grow best from 1 foot to 4 foot, which explains why in all of our lakes and ponds, especially if they're in a circle, the cattails are just lining the edge and there is nothing out in the middle because it gets too deep at a certain point, and right at that that transfer point from, let's say, 4 foot to 5 foot, they stop growing entirely. The first lake that comes to mind though when I think of areas that cattails are growing out in the middle is Lake Okeechobee, and that is because almost the entire lake is the same depth zone. So the bank is not really the bank when everything is the same. Lily pads, depending on what style they are, can grow all the way out to like 10 feet sometimes. Yes, stems that are 10 feet long. And hay grass and pencil reeds also seem to kind of max out around that 3 to 5 foot depth range, similar to cattails. So now we can put all this grass knowledge together and take a look at a few different shots from lakes that I've fished before to see if we can understand anything about the depth or the bottom composition by just looking at the grass. Now what you see here is a drone shot of an area of pencil reeds out in the middle of the lake. And seeing this immediately makes me piece together in my mind what the depth and bottom composition is like. Obviously, all this area around here is deeper than 4 foot with what seems to be a very huge, large hump rising up to that 2 to 4 foot range. That's basically the entire thing you see is just an offshore hump. And again, I know that because of how deep pencil reeds can grow. I can also make the assumption that this entire hump is hard bottom because if it was soft, I would more than likely see some lily pads or submergent grasses mixed in, but it's just cattails. So it is a very hard bottom, probably mostly rock hump. Next, take a look at this shot. I'm fishing a very standard grass-filled lake near my house that has cattails lining almost the entire edge of the lake, and lily pads that start almost immediately once it gets too deep for the cattails to grow. In some areas, the cattails extend far out into the water off of the bank, the main land. And in others, there's only small little strips, maybe 5 or 6 cattails deep from where the bank starts to where they stop growing. And those small strips clue me in on that area right there has the bank sloping off a lot quicker than the areas where the cattails grow out really far. And so both of those examples, the cattails and the pencil reeds, show me a lot about the bottom composition and the depth of those certain areas that will help me select the right lures to throw. All right, folks, just over halfway done with the science aspect of this grass fishing masterclass. Hopefully you've enjoyed it so far. If you have, go ahead and check if you're subscribed to my channel. Doing that costs you absolutely nothing but keeps this content 100% free. That way I can keep doing this as my full-time job. I love it. Next, I want to touch on one thing that may not come to mind about grass, and that is not every type of grass, even the grasses that look good, are good grass. Take, for example, this lake right here, where I was fishing a punch rig over a large bank of milfoil, and a punch rig's a technique I'll discuss here in the lure recommendation section here in a second. Now, even though milfoil is a submerging grass, it can grow up tall enough, hit the surface of the water, and then fold over and create some kind of a mat or a canopy. Submerging grasses will grow up tall enough to become partially emergent in the summer to late summer to early fall, and that's a great time as long as you have the proper depth underneath the grass to catch a bass out of that area. Now, just looking at this shot right here, you may think that there's adequate space underneath the entire grass flat, but that would not be correct. Only about half a cast length away from my boat is where the water is deep enough for a fish to be able to live in. Everything you see from here to the shore may look the same from the surface, but by attempting to punch my Texas rig through it, I could feel there was no canopy because the grass just grew too thick. The actual bottom of the lake was way too shallow, and so there wasn't room for the grass to spread out and form an area underneath. So that is an example of bad grass that, again, not the whole area, but just the shallow section is not good for fish. And another example of bad grass was recently on my Uncut channel up in Minnesota. I got on a wicked swim jig bite, and I was catching them in an area that had 5 different types of aquatic vegetation, both submergent and emergent, in this one area. There were cattails super shallow up against the bank in the water. There was some kind of carpet grass that I think was growing from like 1 foot to 3 foot. There was milfoil that was growing from 3 foot to 6 foot, and seemingly a mixture of pencil reeds and lily pads kind of all throughout the shallow areas, again, in those same depth zones. And as I read this, I realized there was actually 6 grasses. There was also cabbage way out there in the middle growing from like 12 feet to 8 foot. And if you go watch that Uncut video, you'll realize for about an hour, I plugged around and fished around every style of grass and really only found on this day, the good grass was around the shallow water where the pencil reeds were and kind of where the pencil reeds caused a depression in that carpet grass. That was the good grass. The bad grass was the milfoil. It was the super shallow cattails, and of course, way out deep in the deep cabbage, the deep milfoil. I caught one out of it, but it wasn't nearly as productive as around the pencil reeds. Now, the very next day, that could all change. The fish, based on the weather or the stage of the spawn they're in, or wherever the bluegill moved to, or the forage moves to, the carpet grass or the foil could become the pads could become the good grass, and the pencil reeds that were amazing yesterday could be the bad grass. It all changes day by day. You've got to find out what works best on your body of water and understand that may change. Well, my goodness, folks, what a dang grass science lesson. Hopefully you learned something that you can apply on your body of water. We talked a lot about types of grasses, where grasses grow, where they don't, but we didn't talk about lures. So let's go over my top 4 categories of lures for catching bass around grass, starting with a broad category, number 1, and that is soft plastics. Now, I'm intentionally keeping this category very broad because every type of soft plastic can work in grass. So your fluke styles, your worms, your creature baits, your craws, they're all great. The 3 main riggings, though, that are best for all-around grass fishing are the light Texas rig worm, the punch rig, and the drop shot. These 3 rigging styles really cover all your bases when it comes to fishing grass, and I'm not gonna dive into how to rig each one of these today, because it's a good thing I've already made master classes on all of these. I will leave those videos linked down in the video description. I will, though, speak very quickly on the punch rig, as I think in the summertime, especially when I'm putting this video out, the punch rig is one of the best ways to catch a bass on a soft plastic around grass. Now, most of the time that I'm punching, I'm throwing this exact setup right here. It is a 50 or 65 pound braid main line, 1 bobber stopper, a 1 ounce tungsten bullet weight, a 3/0 red line VMC flipping hook, and either a Strike King Rage Hawk or a Mach craw, one being crazy floppy and aggressive and the other being very toned down. For your punching setup, try to go with the lightest weight you can get away with while still penetrating that mat or those lily pads or those cattails every single time. So for you, it could be 1.5 ounces, or it could be as low as maybe a 1/2 ounce or a 3/8 if you're punching really, really light stuff. And don't think that a punch rig doesn't work for you guys who bank fish, because my recent pond, I think it was pond 127 in the series, the punch rig saved my day and helped me make a video from the bank. So if you're a bank fisherman and you have no confidence in punching, go watch that video. So again, the 3 styles, drop shot, standard, lightweight Texas rig, and punch rig are the 3 best ways to really rig any soft plastic when fishing around aquatic vegetation. Now, where are you throwing these baits? Well, I talk about it in those masterclass videos. Again, I can't recommend watching those enough, but just in general, anytime the grass has a drop off or anytime the grass has a hole, you want to throw your soft plastics in and around changes in aquatic vegetation. If you have a 100-yard stretch of nothing but flat aquatic vegetation, maybe it's milfoil or coontail, and then a slight change, that's where the fish is most likely going to sit, and a soft plastic, especially the drop shot and the Texas rig, are great ways to target those fish. Now, for category number 2, I want to talk about my favorite lure to fish in grass, especially in the summertime, and that is jigs. Now the jig is similar to the Texas rig in that you want to fish them in the same general locations, but the jig, with the lightest one I throw being 3/8 ounce and usually the heaviest being a 1/2 ounce, it just sinks down in the grass a lot more than a lightweight Texas rig does. So if you have good healthy grass, again submergent grass in your body of water, a jig is a great move. If you have nothing but nasty algae snodgrass, I would go with a lightly weighted or weightless soft plastic. But we talked about the soft plastics, let's talk about jigs. I prefer to use an Arky style jig head with a vertical line tie as opposed to a horizontal. And you may think, Tyler, does that really make a difference? Anecdotally, I really think it does. When I'm fishing around underwater grass and I'm trying to hop it through, I think a horizontal line tie grabs more of that grass and does not allow the jig to be nearly, I wouldn't say as weedless, because you're not catching it on the hook, you're catching the grass on the head of the jig itself. And like I mentioned, the size jig head that I throw is usually 3/8 or 1/2 ounce. If I'm fishing really deep grass, I'll go with a 5/8 or a 1 ounce jig. But for the majority of you guys out there, that is not really applicable. I would go with maybe even down to a 1/4, honestly, if you can find a good Arky style jig head you like that's that light. Now, there are many times in aquatic vegetation that I want to present the jig in really shallow water. And while a standard Arky style can definitely work well for that, a jig that is designed to swim, aka a swim jig, is my favorite. This here being my new favorite, the Outcast Tackle Jackpot jig. It has a beefy VMC redline hook that, honestly, y'all, may be the best jig hook I've ever used. It's got a really smooth coating on there, and with how strong this hook is, all you gotta do is lean into those fish and you hook them almost every time. Now you may look at these two jig heads and say, Tyler, how in the world are those any different? They do look similar, but I promise you the profile and skirt material on this jig helps it swim through shallow grass and lily pads and cattails better than a standard Arky style. So again, for deeper grass, I'll go with the Juice jig. And for shallow grass, honestly, not even just swimming around, but also hopping it, maybe skipping underneath docks that have some grass underneath them, the Jackpot jig is the one that I choose for those scenarios. And if we can count a vibrating jig in this category, my favorite being the 3/8 or 1/2 ounce Strike King Tungsten Thunder Cricket, if that counts as a jig, it absolutely belongs in this category, because when it comes to fishing, you know, grass edges and breaks just off the bank, making super long casts, covering water, there is no better jig for that than a vibrating jig. And again, if you want to learn all about the intricacies of all of these lures, at this point in my career, I've made masterclass videos on all of these. The video description will be loaded with stuff. So those are jigs. They are great for catching bass in the grass, but it would be impossible for me to make a good grass lures video without bringing up the best topwater for grass, the topwater frog. And the frog is really a lure that I feel like most people don't have the confidence to throw where it was intended, which is the nasty, thick stuff you see over there. The frog is designed to be fished around the shallowest, nastiest grass and wood mixture possible, and if you don't throw it there, you're missing out on catching fish, I promise you. Now, my two favorites are the Strike King Popping Pad Perch and the Strike King Normal Pad Perch. I throw the popping, I would say 80% of the time. So as I pan the camera over here, the popping is kind of gonna go over here in the edge, and the normal pad perch is gonna go over here. But honestly, can you get away with the popping pad perch most of the time? You can, but if it's really heavy pads, if it's skipping it into pencil reeds like you see there, or really just matted up grass, I will go with a normal, quote unquote, normal frog over a popping, just purely because the nose helps it get through the grass better than the popping side does. But if I'm fishing any open water at all, I love to have a little bit of a pop to it to help get a bass's attention. And as far as line goes for a frog, in my opinion, you want a 40-pound minimum braided line. Maybe you can get away with 30, but for sure not 20 or 15 or 10. Oftentimes I'm throwing 50 or even 65-pound braid. Now you may be thinking in your head right now, Tyler, that is absolute overkill. I throw frogs on 12-pound mono and I do just fine. You know what? You may do just fine, but when it comes to fishing a frog, it's not the pound test strength of the braid that you need, it is the abrasion resistance. Because when you're fishing a frog in the nasty, shallow, sloppy grass, especially when it's mixed with wood or hard grasses like pads or cattails, you really need the abrasion resistance of that thicker pound test line to help tear through that aquatic vegetation to get the fish and the frog back to the bank or to the boat. So in recap, 2 things to make you a better frog fisherman this summer in the grass: throw the frog shallower and over nastier stuff than you ever have before, gain the confidence there, layer and use heavier pound test braid than you ever used before. I promise you'll catch more fish. So those are the topwater frogs, my category number 3 lure. And I want to talk about one more category that honestly might surprise you a little bit for fishing around grass, and that is crankbaits. Every crankbait comes equipped with 2 treble hooks, which you may think spells potential disaster when fishing around grass. You think, I'm just gonna get snagged the entire time. But as long as you fish the crankbaits, my 2 favorites here being the Strike King 3XD and the Hybrid Hunter, in the depth zones they are intended for, you're not gonna have many issues. Now, the one thing I'll say is that when you're fishing a crankbait over hard bottom, you can afford to throw a deeper diving crankbait than the bottom you have. So let's say you are fishing in 10 feet of water, you can throw a Strike King 6XD, which dives to 16 to 18 feet of water, and just dredge the bottom with it, because you're not gonna snag a whole lot of stuff. But around grass, you can't really do that. You have to stick a lot closer to the advertised depth the crankbaits dive. So the 3XD, it dives, I would say, 8 to 12 feet depending on the pound test line that I'm throwing. And so if I'm fishing a deeper grass area, I will throw this crankbait, but only if the depth is like 8 to 10 feet. I want this thing ticking the top of the grass just a little bit and maybe occasionally getting foul in the grass. All I gotta do is give my rod tip a snap and usually it clears the grass off. And as long as I fish this thing close to the grass, I will catch a lot of bass. Now, the one crankbait, y'all have seen it on the channel, that actually fishes really, really good when almost getting stuck in the grass is the Hybrid Hunter, due to its L-shaped bill you see here. With this crankbait, you can afford to get it a little bit shallower and get stuck in more grass because it will free itself more often than a standard build crankbait. But for the most part, you can have good success throwing crankbaits in grass. And the reason why I'm talking about it in this video is not because it's the 4th most efficient grass fishing lure, but because, especially for you guys who fish up north, you have deeper aquatic vegetation in your bodies of water. If you're not throwing a crankbait, you are going to be missing out this summer. Honestly, so much of my job as a fishing instructor on YouTube is not to teach y'all new things. I'm glad I'm doing that, but it's to encourage you and remind you of certain lures that maybe you haven't tried in a while that can work on your pond or lake. Now, speaking of ponds, 3XD, probably not the best for ponds. Hybrid Hunter absolutely is, but one of my other favorites for fishing aquatic vegetation in a pond is going to be the lipless crankbait. Because this crankbait sinks in the water column, it can be a variable depth lure. So I can retrieve it really fast with my rod tip up, and that'll keep the bait higher in the water column, or I can drop my rod tip and fish a lot slower and keep it lower in the water column, which really helps when your grass in your pond is not really consistent. It kind of grows high here, grows low here, and after making some bad casts that get fouled, you can understand where the contours are just by fishing a lipless crankbait. And the types of crankbaits, honestly, that don't work well around the grass are the ones that A, dive too deep, or B, float really slowly or suspend in the water column. When I'm fishing a crankbait around grass, I want it to float really fast away from the grass. So let's say I'm retrieving it, I feel grass, I stop it. I want the crankbait to almost hit the grass and float up, and then I continue on with the retrieve. And practically any crankbait fished around eelgrass, my arch nemesis, is not really a productive crankbait. I would go with a spinnerbait, vibrating jig, or a swim jig in those locations. I know some guys are gonna fight back and say, hey, I catch plenty of fish on a DT6 around Lake Gunnersville eelgrass. That's a very specific thing. For most bodies of water, eelgrass is not conducive to good crankbait fishing. So we've reached the point in the video where I wanna show you guys some of my favorite grass fishing catches of all time on the lures that I recommended, starting first with one of my favorite drop shot grass fishing catches of all time. There's one. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is absolutely silly. This is so silly, y'all. Just silliness. Oh gosh, man. Okay. Come on, come on, come on. Y'all, this drop shot rod is so good. Oh my gosh. I love this rod. You need one. It's like $100, come on. For a rod of this quality at $100, come on, come on, oh, come on, oh, come on, oh, come on, come on. Look, he's gonna jump, and I'm okay with that because I'm good with my knot, and I'm good with my hook. Oh, and I'm good with another 4-pounder. That's what I'm good with. Oh man, roof of the mouth, drop shot fish, just like that. Man, oh man, subscribe. Now on the opposite side of the soft plastic spectrum, let's see a punch fish catch. Oh, here we go. Told you, told you. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Get in here, get in here. Oh my gosh. Don't need flip-flops. Look at that chunker. Look at that absolute donk. Gosh, this is fun. I told you. What did I tell you, or did I tell you they'd be up there? I had to put a heavier weight on, and he ate that rage bug. It's gone. Gonzola. Heck yeah. My goodness. What a fish. What a dang fish. Now, like I said, the jig is my favorite way, the most exciting way to catch bass in the grass, and you're gonna see that over these next two clips. First, the Arky style, second, the swim jig. Yes, there we go, there we go, there we go. Yes, let's go, baby. That's what I'm talking about. We have figured him out. That is not a Minnesota bass, that's skinny. It's a long, skinny bass right there. Horsed him out of this heavy cover. Awesome, heck yeah. Now for the topwater frog, I have so many to choose from, but here's one of my favorites of all time. Gosh, dang, son. Holy cow, I can't even turn him. Can't even turn him. Oh my gosh. Oh my gracious. Holy cow. What a fish. This place is nuts. This is absolutely stinking nuts. These are without a doubt the hardest fighting largemouth bass I have ever caught in my entire life. That one will go 4 pounds and it's 18 inches. Gosh, holy cow. Just look at how that frog is gone. Like, they're eating it so dang good. There's no way when a fish eats it like that they're coming off. I don't care what kind of cover you got them in, how strong they are. That fish ain't coming off. Dang, 401, 4-pounder. Absolutely bonkers. And lastly, a medium diving crankbait, like I said, can work well around the grass, and when they hit it hard. Yes sir, yes sir. I think it's a big one. Yes sir, big one, big one, big one, big one. Oh my goodness. I don't know how much he has the crankbait by. That was cool. I saw him chase after it and try to eat it about 4 times before he finally got it. Oh my goodness. Ooh, got him. Oh, look at that guy right there. 3-pounder. They were sitting on the edge of this point here. Gravel dog in the mouth. All right, he was not coming off. I was worried about him getting off as he was fighting, but we're good. Thank you, my friend, for being entered into my tournament. 5 of those will win me a dang cracker box. Well, that, folks, was my best attempt at a grass fishing masterclass video, and man, we covered it all, from the science of grass to what types of grass you have in your body of water and what it means for bottom composition and depth. And I shared with you guys my 4 top categories, at least, that I'm fishing right now around aquatic vegetation. Thanks to BuzzerRocks for sponsoring this video. I love that I got to pair the science of grass with a sponsor that actually cares about bass science. I will leave their live well treatment and their blood stop formula spray linked down in the video description. If you keep bass in your live well, you need to have this stuff, and I think every angler, whether you're a kayak, bass boat, or a bank angler, needs this blood stop spray. Now, throughout this video, I mentioned a lot of masterclass videos that I've made, and so if you like this format, you're gonna love those. I will leave my vibrating jig, my chatterbait masterclass clickable up here in this corner, and my drop shot masterclass over here in this corner. My name's Tyler. As always, it is a pleasure to make these videos for you guys. I love my job, and we'll see y'all next time right here on TRF.